Well, I guess it's good afternoon. Thank you all for coming today. As you see, just a little while ago, on the advice and instructions coming from the governor and myself, that we have issued a stop work order to 460 Mobility Partners. Those are the contractor that were building 460, to temporarily stop work on that project until, quite frankly, we end up knowing where we're going to actually be going. When I became Secretary of Transportation, or nominated towards the end of last year, it was about the same time that the state had hired outside consultants to help with this project and the permitting. As you know, it was signed back in 2012, and the last year this ongoing process had been occurring. Met with the consultants, and they pointed out three things to the state. One, that the Army Corps of Engineers was very well within their rights to ask that other alternatives be considered. Two, that this was a significant mitigation, almost 500 acres or impact to wetlands, and then unless a significant mitigation of the wetlands could be accomplished, that the permit on this particular right-of-way would be difficult to obtain. And three, that entering to a supplemental environmental impact statement would be appropriate to look at alternatives, because we are still committed to achieving the mobility, the hurricane evacuation, and the economic development opportunities in the corridor. So the purpose and need of the project, we are still firmly behind. So upon Governor McAuliffe coming into office, we took the decision to limit work with our partners on the project to the permitting process and to looking at alternatives. That process went on for a couple of months, and just in the last couple of days, it was brought to my attention that there could not be a significant mitigation of the wetland impact on the current corridor, on the current record of decision. So therefore, that has led us to bring to this decision today that we are stopping work on that permit and on that corridor until we determine what our alternatives are in looking at different corridors. They may include the current 460 enhancements. I need to stress also, this corridor still could be the one selected, although it would have to show that it had a lesser impact on the environment than the other alternatives. So as we go forward, all the work and all the emphasis will be put on looking at those alternatives to meet the purpose and the need that I've explained earlier of what this project will do. I recently, on the way over here, met with Colonel Olson from the Army Corps of Engineers. I shared with him the news, and we agreed that we now were aligned on the state, and the Army Corps of Engineers was aligned on what we were trying to accomplish. So I'm very comfortable that we will be making improvements in the corridor. I just can't tell you which alignment they will be on. Now let me give you a little bit of history as to how we got here. As you know, this contract was a result of the P3 process, or the Public-Private Transportation Act. And in 2012, a comprehensive agreement was signed with 460 Mobility Partners, the contractor, 460 Funding Corporation, which was as the name implies, the funding corporation that would be responsible for the bonds and subsequent tolling, and VDOT. And VDOT was to be responsible for the construction of the project, overseeing the contractor, the continued maintenance, and negotiating that construction contract. Just as the decision I have taken today, along with Governor McAuliffe, to halt work until we get the assessments of the alternatives, it would have been the decision of the previous administration directing VDOT on the contract. So I want to point out that that procurement was for the P3, and therefore did not have to go through the normal procurement guidelines. Now, some people would say in the P3 process that that's greater transparency, more economic competition. Opponents would say you only had certain people looking at it. I'll leave that to how you decide, but it went through the P3 process with the ultimate decision being with the previous administration. As we entered into the past year, the contractor mobilized and began his work and was paid in accordance with the contractor payment schedule. And as you all well know, many of you reported on the issues we were having in obtaining the permit. To date, approximately almost $300 million have been spent on this project working forward. And it did not appear that we would be good stewards or fiduciaries of the taxpayers' money to continue to pay the contractor until we determined again what alignment we would be putting these improvements on. We have talked with our contractor, 460 Mobility Partners, and they are working with us. But I want to make clear that they have done all the work that was necessary for us to obtain a permit, should that corridor be selected, and they've done all the environmental work on that corridor that we need to be looked at during the updated environmental impact statement. So the contractor has done what it was called for under the contract. We are now waiting to get direction on a permit as to what we will construct. So upon that, it will take about a year for this process to go through, which will be public hearings and all the associated ramifications of going through this environmental study. At the end of that, a decision will be made on the preferred corridor, and then we will move forward on buying right-of-way and moving to construction. I'm sure if the current corridor isn't selected, we will have some other design work to do. But that brings us to where we are and to why the decision was made today to stop work on the contract and the project in terms of construction on this right-of-way. But I want to make it clear, we are not backing off the project. We believe that it's very important that we get enhanced mobility in that corridor, that we get an evacuation route to help evacuate this area in case we need it, and also for economic development of the port and supporting all the activities in Hampton roads. So that is the reasoning as to why we made the decision today, how we are moving forward, focusing only on working with the Corps of Engineers to find what we can permit that will meet the purpose and need which I've described. And we believe being good stewards of the taxpayers and our citizens by only spending money on that until we determine where we're headed from here. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Secretary, you mentioned that you're not backing off of this project. It's too early to determine the final outcome, but it feels like this project, at least for now, has been nixed for at least a long time. Is there hesitation there because you guys have spent $300 million on this project already?
No, there's no hesitation about our commitment to move forward with improvements in the corridor. The hesitation comes to making sure we have a permit before we begin work in earnest again on those items that we've just previously mentioned. But there is no hesitation. The need and purpose for these improvements still remain. Now, we'll make a decision on what that may be once we get the permit and what that record of decision will end up being. I cannot tell you today what the road may look like. I cannot tell you today if it's a toll facility. That will all depend on what the permit, but we are focused on getting the purpose and need put to bed so we know what we're working on going forward.
Now you have spent $300 million already. You don't want to throw good money after bad to be a good steward of the money. How much is the delay of this going to cost Virginia from here until you can get these permits? I mean, are we talking about another $100 million? I mean, because you got people out there working and...
No, well, that's why we're stopping. No, it won't. The environmental process will be led by VDOT. So I want to make it clear that the contractor has received a stop work order. So there will be no more accruing of payment to the contractor.
But do we owe him because we are stopping the work?
We have the
How much
right
do we owe
under,
him?
we have the right under the contract to issue this order. Depending on the length of time that this continues, the contractor may assert other issues or may raise, which will be negotiated. I can't tell you what that might be. We're hopeful that we will continue to negotiate and work in good faith with the contractor so that the monies that have already been expended will be able to be, as much as possible, utilized on whatever we do build.
Mr. Secretary, I'm sorry, I hate to have you do this again, sir, but that's a very important question. It needs to be answered, and I think we now have the problem remedied. And if you could just answer that question one more time. Thank you.
Okay, as I said, approximately $300 million have been expended to date. Payments to the contractor and internal monies.
But how much are we going to have to pay the contractor because of this stop?
From this point forward, there will be no more payments to the contractor for work to be performed. We have the right under the contract to stop work. Depending on the length of time that occurs, and I estimate it's going to be a year before we have a decision as to what we can build, the contractor may assert some other defenses. But it's our hope that we continue to work with them and be able to negotiate with them that they would be the person or the entity that would move forward with construction on what is finally permitted. There's no guarantee that will happen. And if that isn't the case, then there will be a negotiated settlement. I can't answer, Andy, how much more money would need to be paid the contractor.
In hindsight, should the environmental permits have been obtained before we started going down this path?
As I mentioned, this was a P3 process, and it fell with outside the normal procurement methods and obligations of the state. Now, the purpose of the P3 is to get more competition and hopefully bring in the private sector, both in terms of design and potentially funds. In terms of going forward here, had it been a normal procurement, there would probably been in the contract a notice to proceed. In other words, the contract would have been staged. The contract would have been let, certain things would have been accomplished, but not authorized to proceed on other things until the permit had been secured. That was not done in this case. That will be done in all future cases, regardless of whether it is a P3 or not in that regard. And as you know, I've taken steps with the governor's approval of reorganizing the P3 office. It's under different leadership. It will be focused on those projects that actually lend themselves to P3 procurements. And just like I said before, it will be my responsibility as Secretary of Transportation, the governor's, to approve those contracts. And we will not put the state or obligate the state to be at risk until we have a permit. That doesn't mean we may not sign a contract, because there's some things that can be done. But until we are able to proceed to work, we will not put the state at risk.
But there is a scenario under which this may not be built. There is a scenario.
There is a no-build scenario. That's correct. There are 6 alternatives. There are the current record of decision, which we've been talking about, the existing road. There are 3 options that have some characteristics of both, and there's a no-build. While I can't guarantee that there will be improvements made, I can tell you that Colonel Olson with the Army Corps and I, we did reach agreement on what the objectives are, and those are the 3 things I said.
Have you identified any other projects in Virginia that could potentially end up in a semi-limbo?
The answer is no. We have looked, and as you may know, we did stop work on Route 29, but that contract had a notice to proceed. So therefore, it was well within our right, and not many monies were spent going forward on that contract. And we'll be working through a process, still committed to improvements in that area, but we'll be working on that process at the next CTB meeting.
And when did construction on the 460 project actually start? It was last year, but when exactly?
Construction has not started.
Oh, it has not
There has not been one shovel of earth turned over for construction.
So if the current preferred alignment could not meet the environmental hurdle, what makes you think that any of the others can?
Well, we already have an existing road, and they are typically much easier to get improvements on because they're already existing. But there is no guarantee. There's no guarantee that they will be less expensive than the contract that we have and the project we have.
And if the existing road is used, how much of that $300 million is wasted or not usable?
If the existing road is used, not very much of the $300 million would be applicable. Now, it would be negotiated. Certainly, there are some mobility charges, mobilization things that we could work with. Certainly, the contractor has been paid for things that we haven't utilized yet, but they would have to be negotiated because by the contract, they have no legal obligation to repay those.
Does it make more sense for this project to be a tolls project?
That will depend on the alignment. If in fact there are long stretches of uninterrupted with curb cuts, there's a potential. As you know, there are bonds issued on the project now, and that's one of the things we're very considerate of. Our bond holders, and in working with them, we have noticed them as to what actions we are taking. I'm sure that this will lead to some type of notice given to them, a downgrade. It is not an event of default. Stopping work is not an event of default on the bonds. Beginning, we are making it clear we are not terminating the contract, the project. We are stopping work, or the contract. We are stopping work. Neither the contract nor the project is being terminated.
They have to repay those bonds if the tolls don't happen?
Those bonds are an obligation of 460 Funding Corporation, and therefore not obligations of the state of Virginia.
So the bond payer just wouldn't be paid back if there are no tolls?
The bond payers would be the ones that would be responsible, yes.
Now, for a long period, I'm sorry, David.
I would just say, just to follow, wouldn't that hurt the state's credibility in the future? I know they're not obligated, but they're kind of the same thing.
Yeah, so certainly there's reputational risk on both sides of this transaction. Certainly, you're right, while not a direct obligation, whether or not that would entice another bondholder, another investor to say, well, that may in some way impact them. Same thing on the contractor. There's a additional amount of work to be done in the state of Virginia. I want to make it clear, I'm still, and so is the governor, very favorable to P3 projects, with the exceptions that I've talked about in terms of one of the things that I will do, and I've already sent letters to the transportation committees in both the House and in the Senate, and also the Senate Finance and House Appropriations. I've contacted them personally about this decision. I will continue doing that going forward. I may not seek their approval, but I will always seek their advice and let them know what we're doing. I will do the same with the CTB before I sign P3 contracts. Again, I will not be looking for their approval, but I will be getting their input. I can do that in closed session if there's anything that happens to be proprietary. So, Dave, there are reputational risks on both sides. That's why I can report to date all parties have been working together, and we hope that the collaborative effort continues in the future.
It sounds like landowners in the path of the preferred alternative corridor have new hope now that the existing road will be improved, but also it sounds like their limbo as to what will happen eventually has been extended another year. Do you have any message for those people?
Yes, that is right. We understand that they have been, and the message is we're working as fast as we can to bring it to a conclusion. I believe that the choices that we have made today and the actions taken today are the most expedient way to get this project done And quite frankly, I believe it is the only way to get this project done.
Now, there's been a great deal of reporting from our organization dealing with tolls on the Midtown and downtown tunnel.
Right.
Will money be taken from this 460 project, which was suggested during the campaign, and put it towards paying down the tolls on the downtown and Midtown tunnel?
There is no plan to take any monies off of this project until we get to the very end and to see what we're actually going to build. If, in fact, there is monies left after that and there is no decision to go forward, which I think is not what we're intending. We're intending to get these improvements done. That money would then go through the allocation process of the CTB. So it would not be up to it would go through the CTB process, and there's no guarantee that it would be on the downtown, midtown tunnel, any project in Hampton Roads, or any project anywhere else in the state. It would go through that process.
Now, would you go so far as to say that the Army Corps of Engineers have been obstructionists in this process?
No. In fact, I would go so far as to say is that they were doing what they believed was correct, and what they believed to be what they were put there for by the law. I mean, we can say that we think they overreached. My guess is they would believe that we were pushing them in that regard. So no, I'm very comfortable that they had the rights to do this. And that the last year, I wish we would have reached the conclusion before now that we should have done what we're doing now, but we are where we are. So no, I do not believe that they have been obstructionist in any way.
On another issue, yesterday, Mayor Will Sessoms talked about the state support for extending light rail. There seemed to be some concern about exactly where we stand with that. What is the state's commitment that you can tell us, sir, about extending light rail into Virginia Beach, and how much are you all willing to put up to help make that happen?
Well, as soon as Virginia Beach makes a decision on what they're going to build, then we probably can give an answer to your question. The governor campaigned on extending light rail in Hampton Roads, and he is committed to helping. Now, what that turns out to be in financial terms, we have not had a request. As I said, they have so far not made a decision on which way they're going. That request will, and our response will be based on not only the cost, how much they're asking, but also how is it going to improve economic. The governor campaigned on economic development around the area. So there are a lot of criteria to be discussed, Andy. I will say we are favorably looking at how we can help, but to what level I can't comment on because I just don't know what's going to be asked of us.
You said construction had not started on the road yet. When was it slated to begin, and what have you guys spent the $300 million on so far if they're not building?
Right. The construction was slated to begin in 2014, about right now. In that regard, right-of-way acquisition was slated to start last year, which it did not happen. And so the monies have been spent. First of all, the way the P3 process works, if you're the successful bidder, the cost that you incurred getting the bid in place are to be reimbursed. So part of it was for that. This is a design-build project. And so there's design that had to be done, and some of the permit process was done. That would be normal. All those would be normal in any procurement. In this particular case, mobilization costs were put in place to get headquarters open, equipment and all that order to begin construction. And so that's the primary use of most of those funds.
I haven't been following this issue as closely as some other folks here, but when exactly did the Corps step in and say, hey, there might be a problem here?
The Corps has been consistent for many years in their letting us know that this particular corridor was going to be problematic. I served as the 460 Funding Corporation chairman. And as I said, our primary responsibility was to fund the bonds. We disclosed in the bond documents that it was a very significant risk to the project that a permit was not guaranteed. The Corps, there's documentation back many years where they have expressed concern about this particular corridor.
So who will be doing the environmental work over the next year, and how will that be paid for?
The environmental work will primarily be led by VDOT, so internally in VDOT, although we do have external consultants that have been, as I said, were hired as of last December. I believe it's about $100,000 is what the consultant's contract is to help us work through this. So there'll be some monies spent through VDOT, but not significant, but only on working on the environmental impact statement.
How does this change from what you'd said a couple of months ago, that only money would be spent for permitting?
Yeah, it changed because of the information that I got last week. Remember, I said we were spending money a couple of months ago on permitting and environmental. I have now stopped all on the permitting and the contract because we have now learned that the current corridor cannot be significantly mitigated for the wetlands impact.
So how much will this save by stopping the permitting?
The contractor was to receive $35 million a month over the next year.
And the contractor is?
460 Mobility Partners, which is made up of a partnership of Ferrovial and American Infrastructure. I need to point out here that while the contractor was not at risk for the permit, they were to perform those services in that regard. But although, so if we would have paid that money over the next year and not received the permit, they were on no obligation to repay the monies. The state maintained the risk of the permit, warranted in the documents that it would take that risk. So that's why the decision was made that we know where we are, highly unlikely to get a permit on this, and that's why the decision was taken to stop work.
Does the delay doing this environmental work change the cost of the project? Say it's done in 2015, 2016, 2017. How many more millions of dollars are we talking here by delaying it?
Can't answer that question. There is a possibility that what's permitted would cost less in that regard, depending on what it is. But that's why I can't answer that question. I don't know what will be permitted.
So by stopping this permitting work, how have the odds changed in regards to whether this will be an improvement of the existing road or an entirely new road?
I would say that the odds have swung in favor of it being some type of improvements to the current road, although that doesn't preclude that there would be some combination of both. But clearly the current corridor is if you can't mitigate significantly the wetlands, it's in a wetland corridor. So building in that, whether it's on the existing, offshoot of that, or, the corridor under investigation, have the probability has gone down.
So now people face the prospect of a tolled 460, an existing tolled 460, with no free alternative to get.
That could be a possibility. Although I can't answer that. I have no idea if what is permitted will even lend itself to being a toll facility.
Right, if you're building off the existing road, then the chances for the tolls would be less, right? Because you aren't really constructing a whole new infrastructure. Then we start getting into the same problem with we're tolling the downtown tunnel, but we're not making any really significant improvements to road capacity.
It's a 55-mile corridor, Andy. That would determine on could you get 20 miles? Maybe that that were no obstruction. I don't know the answer to that. But generally, I think moving towards that has lessened the impact or the availability of tolling.
Right, by keeping it on the current road lessens the chances of tolls.
Yes, I'm not suggesting that there won't be any. I'm just saying it lessens it.
exactly when you got the information that said, hey, we're gonna need to put a stop to this because there's environmental issues at hand?
Well, as I said before, the environmental issues have been known for quite a while. I cannot answer why the decision to go forward previously, that was a risk somebody else, decided to make a business judgment on.
We're going to wrap questions up because he's got somewhere he's got to be here very shortly. Just take one more question from.
Let me just
the
finish.
group.
I'll finish his
Okay.
question. And so, when I came in, that's when we took the decisions we did based on where we knew we were.